The wind howled through the towering pines, swirling the snow into a blinding fury. Sivah stood at the den's entrance, her silver-gray fur dusted with frost. Her breath came in ragged clouds as she strained her ears, listening. Somewhere beyond the trees, her newborn pup, Riven, was lost in the merciless storm. Her mate, Kor, growled lowly beside her. "He's gone, Sivah." His golden eyes held sorrow, but also finality. The pack had already moved deeper into the forest, seeking shelter from the incoming blizzard. The cold could kill even the strongest wolves, and a helpless pup stood no chance. Sivah's heart clenched. Riven was the runt, weaker than the others, but he was hers. She had felt his tiny body warm against her belly, heard his soft whimpers as he nursed. She had licked his fur clean, nuzzled him to sleep, and watched him try to keep up with his stronger siblings. He was small, but he was a fighter. And he was still out there. He had to be. Without another word, she plunged into the storm. Snow fell thick, each flake a tiny dagger against her fur. The cold clawed at her muscles, slowing her, whispering that she should turn back. But she would not. She could not. Every step forward was a battle, but her mother's instincts refused to waver. Her ears strained, searching for the tiniest sound. Every howl she let out was met only with the answering cry of the wind. The world became an endless expanse of white. Sivah's paws sank deep into the fresh snow, the weight of the blizzard pressing down on her. She followed the faintest scent, a fragile thread through the wind's brutal grasp. Every few steps she howled, praying for a response, but silence greeted her. A flash of movement caught her eye. A shadow, too large to be riven. A lynx, its amber eyes glinting with hunger, crouched on a low rock. It had caught the same scent. Sivah's stomach twisted. She knew desperation when she saw it. The lynx was starving, and to it, her pup would be nothing more than an easy meal. Sivah snarled, her body trembling but her will unyielding. The lynx lunged, claws flashing. The two creatures met in a brutal clash, the world around them forgotten. Sivah felt sharp pain as the lynx's talons raked her shoulder, but she didn't falter. With a powerful bite, she clamped onto its neck, forcing it back. The predator slinked away, defeated, but not far. It was still watching, waiting. If she showed weakness, it would return. She pressed on. Riven needed her. Night fell, deep and merciless. Sivah staggered forward, exhaustion threatening to pull her under. The icy winds cut through her fur like a blade, and her limbs felt heavier with each step. The thought of Riven, small and helpless in the storm, pushed her forward. The scent was growing fainter, but she was close. She had to be close. Hours passed, or was it days? Hunger gnawed at her belly, and exhaustion pulled at her limbs. Still she walked. Still she howled. Then faintly, so faintly she almost didn't believe it, a reply? A tiny, weak whimper. Her heart surged. She followed the sound, paws moving faster now. She nearly collapsed when she found him. Riven lay curled beneath a fallen tree, his tiny body shivering, eyes half-lidded with exhaustion. Snow clung to his fur, and his breaths were shallow. He was weak, but alive. She licked his face, urging him to move. He whimpered, trying to stand on shaking legs. His tiny body trembled with cold, but he was still here. He had fought to survive. Relief was short-lived. New danger lurked in the shadows. A pair of glowing yellow eyes peered from the darkness. A scent of decay and hunger drifted toward her. She stood, teeth bared, body shielding Riven from the unseen threat. A low growl echoed in response. She knew the smell. Coyotes. A small pack of coyotes emerged, their bodies lean with hunger, their noses twitching at the scent of weakness. 5 of them. Sivah curled protectively around Riven. She was weak, but she wouldn't let them take him. A fight was inevitable. The first coyote lunged. She met it mid-air, fangs snapping shut around its throat. But there were too many. Claws raked her back, teeth tore at her flanks. Still she fought. She fought with everything she had. Blood stained the snow. Pain blurred her vision, but she refused to fall. Riven let out a tiny yelp, terrified, but alive. And then, another howl. Deep, powerful, commanding. Correspondence, her mate had returned. And he was not alone. The pack's howls filled the night. They crashed into the coyotes, fangs flashing, bodies colliding in the snow. One by one the scavengers fled, leaving behind only silence and crimson-streaked ice. The battle was over, but Sivah barely had the strength to stand. Blood matted her fur, and pain lanced through every limb. She had nothing left to give. Kor stood over her, his golden eyes filled with something unreadable. "You should have stayed," he murmured. His voice was low, but there was no anger, only understanding. Sivah, battered but victorious, nudged Riven forward. "He's alive." Kor looked at their pup, who trembled, but stood, small yet unbroken. He let out a low rumble of approval before licking Sivah's wounded face. She had done what no one believed possible. She had found their son, and she had brought him home. The pack circled them, their voices rising in a chorus of howls. A song of triumph, of survival, of a mother's love. Sivah lifted her voice to the sky. A mother's howl, a call of love, defiance and victory. She had risked everything, faced death itself, and still, she stood. The snow swirled around them, no longer a threat, but a whisper of the battle fought and won. Sivah curled around Riven, her warmth surrounding him, her eyes closing as exhaustion finally claimed her. And in that moment, the storm quieted, as if the wild itself had acknowledged her victory. The darkness took her, but not in fear. She had won. She had saved him. The storm had passed, but the aftermath lingered. The wind was gentler now, but it carried the scent of blood and exhaustion. Sivah lay on the icy ground, her body battered, her mind drifting between wakefulness and the dark pole of sleep. She had fought, bled, and won. But at what cost? Riven whimpered beside her, his tiny body curling into her warmth. Kor stood close, his powerful frame blocking the worst of the cold. Around them, the pack moved, their paws silent against the snow, their eyes filled with quiet reverence. They had seen what Sivah had done, had witnessed her defy death itself to bring her son home. But not all were convinced it had been the right choice. "The pack needs strength," growled Vorin, Kor's second in command. His dark pelt bristled with unease. "A mother's love is admirable, but we cannot afford weakness." Sivah lifted her head, her golden eyes burning with quiet fury. She was too weak to fight, too drained to challenge, but she would not let anyone call her son a burden. "He is not weak. He is alive," Kor said firmly, cutting off any further argument. "Because of her." Vorin met Kor's gaze, then glanced at Riven. The tension crackled like dry leaves in a fire. Then, with a huff, Vorin turned away. He would not forget this moment, nor would others. A rift had formed within the pack, one that would not easily heal. Sivah exhaled and pulled Riven closer. He was warm against her side, but she could feel his ribs beneath his thin coat. He needed food, warmth, safety. But most of all, he needed to be accepted. And she would fight for that too. The days that followed were filled with silent tension. Sivah's wounds healed slowly, each movement a reminder of her struggle. Riven grew stronger, his legs steadier, his steps more confident. But the pack's unease lingered like an unseen predator. Vorin watched him with sharp eyes, and others whispered in the dead of night. They feared the runt would weaken them, that Sivah's love had clouded her judgment. Kor stood by her, but he was an alpha first, and an alpha's duty was to the pack. One evening, As the sun bled crimson over the snow, Sivah caught the scent of something familiar, yet wrong. The air carried an acrid bitterness, the scent of something lurking where it should not be. Her fur bristled. Coyotes. Not the scavengers from before. These were different. More cautious, more calculating. They had learned. They had seen the packs divide, and they were waiting for the right moment to strike. Sivah's heart pounded as she looked at Riven. He was still small, still vulnerable, but she would not let them take him. Not now. Not ever. She raised her head and let out a warning howl. The battle was not over. The pack moved that night. They could not afford to linger. The scent of the coyotes was too close. Their patience, too unnerving. Kor let them through the trees, their paws silent in the fresh snow. Sivah kept Riven close, her body tense with every step. But the pack's unease was not only for the coyotes. Some among them resented the fight Sivah had waged. They saw Riven as a burden, a risk, and in the eyes of the wild, the weak did not survive. "Why do you fight so hard for him?" Thorin's voice was quiet, but sharp. He had fallen into step beside Sivah, his dark gaze unreadable. "The world does not wait for the weak." Sivah bared her teeth. "He is not weak. He is small. He slows us down." Thorin's voice was neither cruel nor kind. It was simply fact. "The coyotes are watching. If we lose strength, they will come." Sivah knew what he was saying. The pack would not turn on Riven, but if forced to choose between him and their own survival, there would be no hesitation. He was an outlier, a chance they could not afford. Kor called from ahead, signaling a stop. The pack settled in the shelter of a dense pine grove, their bodies curling together for warmth. Sivah lay beside Riven, listening to his soft breaths. She had won one battle. But how many more would come? And at what cost? As she closed her eyes, a single thought gnawed at her mind. How far would she go to keep him safe? The attack came when they least expected it. Sivah woke to snarls and the scent of blood. The coyotes had struck, slipping into the camp under the veil of darkness. Chaos erupted. Wolves clashed with the invaders, fangs flashing in the moonlight. Sivah sprang to her feet, her heart pounding. Riven. A yelp. A small terrified cry. Her blood ran cold. She turned to just in time to see a coyote lunge toward Riven, its teeth bared. Without thinking, Sivah launched herself forward. She collided with the coyote, her teeth sinking into its throat. The two tumbled into the snow, a violent dance of survival. The coyote fought hard, but Sivah fought harder. She ripped and tore, her vision painted red. And then, it was over. The coyote lay limp beneath her, its blood staining the snow. Sivah staggered to her feet, her breath ragged. Around her the battle raged. The pack fought, but they were losing ground. The coyotes were too many, too desperate. Then, above the chaos, a chilling sound cut through the air. More howls. Deep, guttural foreign. Not wolves. Not coyotes. Something worse. Sivah's heart clenched as she realized what was coming. The scavengers had drawn the attention of an even greater predator. Bears. And they were coming. The night trembled with the weight of an unseen terror. Sivah's breath came in short, sharp bursts as she tried to steady herself, but her paws trembled against the frozen ground. Around her, the pack fought off the last of the coyotes, their snarls echoing through the trees. The stench of blood tainted the crisp night air, but none of it mattered now. The bears had come. A monstrous shape lumbered from the shadows, its hulking mass making even the fiercest of wolves look small in comparison. Its fur was thick and matted, its black eyes reflecting the moon's cold light. Sivah knew what hunger did to creatures of the wild, and this bear reeked of desperation. A low growl rumbled from Kor's throat as he stepped forward, hackles raised. The pack gathered behind him, their strength united in the face of this new threat. But Sivah's thoughts were elsewhere. Riven. She turned sharply, searching for her son. He was huddled in the snow a few feet away, his tiny body shaking, his eyes wide with terror. Another bear emerged from the darkness, its heavy steps crushing the blood-stained snow. It was closer to Riven than she was. Without a second thought, Sivah sprinted toward him. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to run in the opposite direction, to flee before she became prey herself. But there was no choice. There never had been. The bear loomed over Riven, its massive paw lifting from the ground. Sivah let out a furious snarl and lunged, sinking her teeth into the beast's thick fur. The bear roared, staggering backward, and Riven scrambled away. Pain exploded in Sivah's side as the bear swiped at her, its claws tearing through her flesh. She yelped, her body crashing into the snow. For a moment, the world blurred, reduced to a haze of agony. Then, another sound split the night. A howl. Not of pain, not of fear. A command. Kor's voice rang through the air, a call to action, a rallying cry. The pack surged forward, their collective strength turning against the enemy. Wolves darted around the bears, snapping at their legs, working together as only wolves could. Sivah fought to stand, her breath ragged. She had done what she could. Now she had to get Riven out of here. "Come," she whispered, nudging him toward the trees. His small body pressed against hers, his warmth a flickering reminder that he was still alive, that he still needed her. The fight raged behind them, but Sivah didn't look back. She ran. The sun rose on a battlefield. The snow, once pristine, was now a canvas of crimson and ruin. The bears had retreated, their hunger no match for a pack willing to fight to the death. But the cost had been great. The wolves lay in exhaustion, some unmoving, others licking their wounds. Sivah pressed her muzzle into Riven's fur, inhaling his scent. He was here. He was safe. But the pack had suffered. Kor stood in the center of the clearing, his body weary but unbroken. His golden eyes surveyed the aftermath with a grim solemnity. Vorin limped beside him, blood matting his dark fur. They had won, but it didn't feel like a victory. "We can't stay here," Kor finally said, his voice hoarse. "Not after this." The pack murmured in agreement. Their home was no longer safe. Too many had seen their weakness. The coyotes, the bears, even the cold itself. If they stayed, death would come for them in one form or another. Sivah swallowed hard. She knew what this meant. A journey. A risk, greater than any battle they had fought. But there was no other choice. Kor turned to her. "Can you walk?" Sivah nodded, though pain still lanced through her side. "I will not slow you down." His gaze flickered to Riven. He didn't speak, but she saw the hesitation, the unspoken question. Would he? Sivah straightened. "He will keep up." Kor studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. "Then we move at dusk." As the pack began to gather what little strength they had left, Sivah looked down at Riven. He was staring at the bodies of the fallen, his small frame tense. "This is the world," she murmured to him. "It is harsh, but we will survive it. Together." Riven looked up at her, something unreadable in his young eyes. Then he pressed his nose to hers, a silent promise. Yes, they would. As dusk settled over the wounded land, the pack prepared to leave. The air was thick with sorrow and exhaustion, but there was no time to mourn. Survival demanded movement. The mountains loomed ahead, their jagged peaks veiled in mist, promising both danger and refuge. Sivah felt Riven press against her side, his small body trembling. She knew he was tired, but they couldn't stop. If they lingered, the remnants of the battle, coyotes or worse, would find them. Kor led the way, his broad shoulders tense with unspoken worries. The pack followed in silence, their usual unity weakened by the losses they had suffered. Foreign walked with a noticeable limp, and old Kala, the wisest among them, kept her head low, murmuring soft words to the younger ones. The mountains were both a promise and a curse. They would provide shelter, places to hide, and a chance to start again. But they also held dangers unknown, from treacherous cliffs to unseen predators lurking in the shadows. As they moved deeper into the unknown, the snow thickened. The cold became more than an enemy. It became a force that threatened to break them from within. Sivah felt it gnaw at her bones, an insidious force that drained her strength with every step. Her wounds ached, each breath sharp with pain, but she refused to slow down. She would not let Riven see her weakness. Not now. A sudden gust of wind swept through the trees, carrying with it a sound, a faint, distant howl. Sivah froze, her heart pounding. It was not a call of kin, nor was it one of the scavengers they had left behind. This was something else, something unfamiliar. A warning, a challenge, or something worse? Kor turned his head, ears pricked. His golden eyes met Sivah's for a brief moment, and in that silent exchange, she understood. They were not alone. Nightfall brought little relief. The pack found temporary shelter beneath a fallen pine, but the wind howled mercilessly through the gaps in the branches. The cold bit at their fur, seeping into their bones, making every breath an effort. Sivah curled around Riven, shielding him from the worst of the cold. His breaths were shallow, his tiny body pressed against hers for warmth. She nuzzled his ear, whispering, "Sleep, little one. I will watch over you." But she could not sleep, not with the weight of her past pressing down upon her. Long ago, she had been just as small as Riven, curled against her own mother's side. She remembered the warmth of her mother's fur, the steady rise and fall of her breath, the quiet lull of safety. But that safety had been an illusion, one that had been shattered in an instant when hunger drove other predators into their den. She remembered her mother's growl, low and fierce, the way she had stood between them and the darkness. She had fought with everything she had, fought with the desperation of a mother who had nothing left to lose. But in the end, she had fallen. Sivah clenched her eyes shut. She would not let history repeat itself. Riven would live, no matter what it took. A rustling sound pulled her from her thoughts. She lifted her head, ears twitching. The others were asleep, their exhausted bodies barely stirring. But something outside the makeshift den was moving. She held her breath, waiting. A pair of glowing eyes blinked in the darkness, watching. Sivah's heart pounded. Who or what was out there? By morning, the pack was on the move again. The higher they climbed, the harsher the terrain became. Ice coated the rocks, and the thin air made every step a struggle. The wind cut like a blade, carrying with it the distant scent of something foreign, something unfamiliar. Sivah's ears pricked up. A lone wolf. The stranger emerged from the trees, his fur silvered with age, his eyes sharp with experience. His movements were slow but deliberate, his posture calm but commanding. He was no ordinary wanderer. Kor stepped forward, his body tense with caution. "Who are you?" The stranger tilted his head, regarding them with an almost knowing expression. "A wanderer. Like you." Sivah did not trust him. Something about the way he carried himself, the way he studied them, made her uneasy. He was not lost, nor did he appear desperate. If anything, he looked like a wolf who had already seen the answers to questions they hadn't yet asked. "Where do you come from?" Kor pressed. The stranger's mouth twitched, the ghost of a smile. "From the places you've yet to walk." A vague answer. Too vague. Sivah stepped forward, her protective instincts surging. "What do you want?" The stranger's eyes lingered on her, then on Riven. Something flickered in his gaze, recognition, perhaps. Or something deeper. I have walked this path before, he said finally. And I have seen what waits beyond the mountains. A cold dread curled in Sivah's stomach. After a tense silence, Kor nodded. Then walk with us. The stranger did not smile. He simply fell into step beside them, a ghost among the living. And in his eyes, Sivah saw something that chilled her to the bone. A secret. The silence that followed the stranger's arrival was suffocating. Though his presence was tolerated, Sivah couldn't shake the feeling that he was more than he claimed to be. His movements were precise, too controlled, as if he carried the weight of knowledge no ordinary wolf should possess. There was something ghost-like about him, as if he existed between the world of the living and the dead. As the pack moved forward, the terrain became treacherous. The mountains towered above them, their jagged spires tearing at the sky like the fangs of some sleeping giant. The snowdrifts grew deeper, forcing the wolves to wade through icy sheets that numbed their paws. Their breath formed white clouds that vanished into the unrelenting wind. Hunger gnawed at their bellies, and exhaustion made every step feel heavier. Riven, though brave, was struggling. His legs trembled with every movement, his small frame barely able to push through the snow. Sivah knew he wouldn't last much longer without rest. She cast a glance at Kor, whose golden eyes flickered toward her before landing on the stranger. "We need to stop," she finally said, her voice firm yet desperate. "Riven can't keep up at this pace." Kor hesitated but relented with a nod. "We find shelter first. We can't afford to stay in the open." The wind howled through the trees like a lamenting spirit. Then, amidst the cacophony of winter's rage, Sivah heard something else, a whisper, distant yet familiar. Her breath caught in her throat. It was faint, but unmistakable. A voice. Her heart clenched. It sounded like her mother. The stranger's ears twitched. His silver eyes darkened. "We are not alone." Sivah's fur bristled. "Who else is out here?" The stranger exhaled softly, his gaze fixed on the swirling darkness beyond the trees. The past. The pack found refuge beneath a rocky overhang, a natural alcove shielded from the worst of the wind. They huddled close, their bodies pressed together for warmth, their breaths rising in wisps of white against the cold air. The fire of their instincts was the only thing keeping them alive in the unforgiving winter. Sivah curled around Riven, pressing her muzzle to his fur, feeling the weak rhythm of his heartbeat. His breathing was slow but steady, and she knew he was trying to be strong for her. The sight of him, so small, so fragile, made her chest tighten. He should have been safe in a den, surrounded by warmth and love. Instead, he was out here, battling the elements for survival. Kor stood watch at the entrance, his form a dark silhouette against the snowstorm raging beyond their shelter. The wind howled like a chorus of mournful spirits, carrying whispers that curled into the edges of Sivah's mind. She shook the feeling away and turned her attention to the stranger. He sat just beyond the reach of the firelight, his presence an enigma, a puzzle Sivah wasn't sure she wanted to solve. Finally, she turned to him. "You haven't told us your name." For a long moment, he was silent. The firelight flickered against his fur, casting long shadows across his face. Then, in a voice as quiet as falling snow, he said, "I had a name once. A long time ago." Sivah narrowed her eyes. "And now?" His lips curved slightly, though it wasn't a smile. It was something sadder, something broken. "Now, I am merely a memory." A chill that had nothing to do with the cold ran down Sivah's spine. There was something haunted in his voice, something that spoke of loss beyond words. She felt an unspoken weight settle over the group, as if they had just touched something ancient and fragile. Kor turned toward them, his golden eyes sharp and calculating. "If you walk with us, then you are one of us. You must have a name." The stranger regarded him for a long moment before speaking. "Elias." The name felt heavy, as if it had been spoken long ago and buried beneath the weight of time. Sivah repeated it under her breath. Elias. It did not bring her comfort. Beyond the shelter, the wind carried whispers that only she could hear. And they were calling her name. They should have sensed it earlier. The shift in the wind, the unnatural stillness of the forest. But exhaustion had dulled their instincts, and when the attack came, it was swift and brutal. A blur of movement erupted from the darkness. Shadows with teeth. Eyes gleaming like polished stones. Coyotes. Dozens of them. Sivah lunged without thinking, her teeth sinking into the first attacker's throat. The taste of blood flooded her mouth. Around her, the pack fought like cornered beasts, their growls a chorus of defiance against the enemy. Kor tore through the ranks, his massive form a whirlwind of claws and fangs. Voran, despite his injury, fought with desperate ferocity, and old Kala, once so gentle, became something savage, something terrifying. But the coyotes kept coming. They were hungry, desperate, driven by the same primal instinct that fueled the wolves. Then, in the chaos, Sivah heard it, a sharp yelp. Riven. Her heart stopped. She turned, searching, panic tightening its grip around her throat. And then she saw him. A coyote had him pinned, its teeth inches from his throat. Sivah's world went red. She moved faster than she ever had before, a blur of fury and desperation. She crashed into the coyote, sending it sprawling. Her jaws clamped down on its throat, and she did not let go. Not until the life had drained from its eyes. Panting, she turned back to Riven. He was shivering, his small body frozen with fear, but he was unharmed. Sivah gathered him close, her own body trembling. "I've got you," she whispered. "I won't let them take you." The battle raged on around them, but for that moment, nothing else mattered. And just beyond the battlefield, Elias watched. His silver eyes unreadable. As if he had seen this before. The battle had ended, but its echoes lingered in the silence. Blood stained the snow in deep crimson streaks, a stark contrast to the pale white around them. Bodies of fallen coyotes lay still, their eyes frozen open in eternal stillness. But the victory had come at a cost. Sivah's legs trembled as she stood over Riven, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She could still feel the weight of the coyote's throat in her jaws, the metallic tang of blood on her tongue. It had been kill or be killed. And she had chosen to kill. She forced herself to look at Riven. His small frame was shaking, his fur matted with snow. He had not been injured, but the fear in his eyes was something far worse. He had seen death too closely. He had seen what it meant to survive in this brutal world. And Sivah knew that something in him had changed. Elias stepped forward, his silver eyes scanning the battlefield. This was only the beginning. Kor let out a low growl. "What do you mean?" Elias glanced toward the distant trees, his expression unreadable. "Coyotes do not hunt in such large numbers unless they are desperate, or led." Sivah's breath hitched. "Led?" Elias nodded. "Something is driving them. Something more dangerous than hunger." A gust of wind blew through the trees, carrying with it the familiar whispers that had haunted Sivah since they left the valley. She shivered, but not from the cold. They were being watched. But by whom? Or what? She turned to Elias, searching for answers in his pale gaze, but his expression remained unreadable. His past, his knowledge, it was all shrouded in mystery. And something about his silence unnerved her. He knew something they didn't. He had always known. The others began gathering themselves, licking wounds and shaking off the remnants of battle. The air smelled of death, of blood, of something far darker than any of them dared to acknowledge. Sivah's muscles ached, but she refused to let herself rest. Not when she could feel the weight of unseen eyes burrowing into her back. Not when the night had become too quiet. The pack had no choice but to move forward. The battle had drained them, but lingering in one place meant death. They traveled in silence, their pace slowed by exhaustion and injury. Even Kor, the strongest among them, limped slightly from a gash along his side. Riven stuck close to Sivah, his tiny body pressing against her for warmth. She wished she could reassure him, but words felt hollow. She had promised to protect him, yet she had nearly lost him. The guilt gnawed at her, deeper than any hunger she had ever felt. As night fell, they found shelter beneath the skeletal remains of an uprooted tree. It provided little protection from the wind, but it was enough. Voron collapsed with a weary sigh, his breathing heavy. Kala, ever watchful, curled beside him, her once vibrant eyes now dull with fatigue. Kor remained standing, his golden gaze fixed on the darkness beyond. And Elias, he was silent as ever, sitting apart from the group, his silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. Sivah hesitated before approaching him. "You said something is leading them." He didn't look at her, but she knew he was listening. "What did you mean?" she pressed. Elias exhaled slowly. "There are forces in this world, Sivah, that even wolves fear. Beasts that do not hunt for food, but for something else." His gaze finally met hers. "You feel it too, don't you? The presence in the wind. The whispers." A shiver ran down her spine. She had felt it. And it terrified her. "Who are you?" she whispered. Elias didn't answer. Instead, he turned his gaze back to the trees. "Sleep while you can." Sivah wanted to demand more, but exhaustion won. She lay beside Riven, wrapping herself around him as he buried his face into her fur. As she closed her eyes, the wind whispered again, carrying with it a voice she knew too well. Her mother's voice. Calling her name. And then, soft footsteps in the snow. Sivah's ears twitched, but when she opened her eyes, there was nothing there. Only the darkness stretching endlessly beyond. Sivah awoke with a start. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her heart pounding against her ribs. The dream had been so real. She had seen her mother, standing in the snow, her fur ghostly white under the moonlight. But her eyes had been empty, hollow. And her voice, oh, her voice, had been filled with something unnatural. "Come to me, Sivah." She shook her head, trying to shake off the lingering dread. The others were still asleep, their bodies rising and falling with each breath. The night was eerily quiet, the wind having died down to an unnatural stillness. She stood, glancing toward the trees. And then she saw it. A figure. Pale and unmoving. Her breath caught in her throat. She knew that form. That shape. "Mother," she whispered. The figure did not move. Did not blink. But it was watching her. Panic clawed at her chest. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Her mother was gone. But as she took a step closer, the figure finally moved. Slowly. Deliberately. And when its mouth opened, a sound unlike anything she had ever heard filled the air. A howl. But not one of longing. Not one of grief. It was a warning. And the darkness beyond the trees began to move. The shadows twisted and curled, stretching outward like grasping fingers. The wind carried whispers now, no longer just in her mind, but all around her, a chorus of voices murmuring in a language she could not understand. Her paws froze in place, the primal instinct to flee warring with the desperate hope that this was not what it seemed. Then the shadows solidified. Eyes gleamed from within the darkness, yellow and unnatural. And the whispers turned into growls. Sivah's breath caught. This was not just fear. This was something ancient, something beyond anything she had ever known. She stumbled back, her heart hammering. The figure of her mother dissolved into mist, but the thing in the darkness remained. It was coming for them. and the pack had nowhere to run. The darkness pulsed, a living, breathing entity that encircled them like a predator stalking its prey. Sivah's heart pounded, her breath a thin mist in the freezing air. The shadows slithered closer, their forms indistinct but undeniably present. Eyes, yellow, unnatural, blinked from within, watching, waiting. She could hear the whispers now, louder, more insistent. They clawed at her mind, twisting around her thoughts like creeping vines. The voice of her mother was among them, but it was wrong, hollow and stretched, like the echo of something long dead. "Sivah," it whispered again. "Come to me." Sivah clenched her jaw, forcing her paws to remain rooted. Fear had no place here. Not now. Not when her pack was in danger. Riven whimpered beside her, his small body pressed against her leg. She could feel his trembling, his breath quick and uneven. Behind them, Kor, Elias, Voron, and Kala stood tense, their hackles raised. "What do we do?" Kala whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. Elias was the first to move. Slowly, cautiously, he stepped forward. "This is not a force we can fight with tooth and claw," he murmured. "But it can be understood." Sivah shot him a sharp glance. "Understood." Elias nodded, his silver eyes reflecting the faint glow of the watching figures. "This thing, whatever it is, it's not here to kill us." "Not yet." The wind held suddenly, rattling the skeletal branches above. The whispering turned to a churning growl, guttural and deep. Elias didn't flinch. He simply turned his gaze towards Sivah. "It's calling for you." Sivah's breath caught. She knew. She had always known. The pack could not stay. The weight of the unseen force pressed against them, an invisible tide pulling them towards something unknown. The shadows swayed, shifting closer but never touching. Watching. Waiting. Sivah knew there was only one choice. "I'll go," she said, her voice steadied despite the tremor in her limbs. Kor growled. "Like hell you will." Elias gave him a sharp look. "This is bigger than us. If we fight it, we die. If she runs, it follows. But if she faces it..." He trailed off, but they all knew what he meant. The choice was not a choice at all. Sivah turned to Riven, lowering her muzzle to meet his wide, fearful eyes. "Stay with the others. I will come back." Riven's ears flattened. "You promise?" A lump formed in her throat, but she swallowed it down. "I promise." She stepped forward, leaving the warmth of her pack behind. The darkness welcomed her like an old friend. The first step was cold. The second, even colder. The moment her paw fully left the solid ground behind, the air around her thickened, pressing in on her ribs, squeezing her breath from her lungs. Her ears filled with a heavy, hollow ringing, like the world itself was exhaling, as if she had crossed into a space where time had ceased to exist. A deep, endless void stretched before her, swallowing all light, all warmth. It wasn't just darkness, it was emptiness, vast and consuming, like the space between the stars. As she walked forward, the temperature dropped to an unnatural cold, sinking deep into her bones, making her feel as though her very essence was being pulled away. Her legs felt heavier with each step, her thoughts slower, clouded. Whispers rose around her, crawling into her ears, twisting her memories, filling them with doubt. What if they never wanted you back? What if Riven will be safer without you? The voices shifted, morphed. Her mother's voice rose above the rest. "Sivah, come home." Sivah squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head violently. "No. You're not real. This is not real." And yet, as she opened her eyes, she wasn't sure anymore. Shapes moved at the edges of her vision, pale, flickering forms with hollow eyes. Wolves? No, shadows of wolves. One of them stepped forward, and she recognized the face. Her brother. Talon. He had died seasons ago, his body torn by claws, his last breath spent defending their mother. Yet here he stood, unbroken, his fur rippling like mist, his eyes searching hers. "You left me," he whispered. "You let me die." Sivah's chest constricted. "No," she choked. "I couldn't save you." He took a step closer. "Couldn't." His voice wavered between sorrow and accusation. "Or wouldn't." The weight of grief and guilt pressed on her like a crushing wave. For a moment, she faltered, her legs weakening. Maybe the voices were right. Maybe she didn't deserve to go back. A faint sound in the distance. A cry. "Riven." Her breath hitched. The heaviness in her limbs lessened, her mind sharpened. She was losing herself in this void, sinking into the past. But Riven was still waiting. He needed her. With a snarl, she surged forward, through the mist, past Talon's fading form. The shadows hissed and recoiled, their whispers turning to wails. The void trembled around her, and she could feel it trying to pull her back. But Sivah ran. She ran toward the light, toward her pack, toward the one thing the void could never take from her, her love for those still alive. The last thing she heard before the darkness shattered was her mother's voice, a whisper no longer twisted by the void. "I am proud of you, my daughter." And then, she was free. The world dissolved into cold silence. Sivah stood in the nothingness, her breath fogging in the frozen air. There was no ground beneath her paws, no wind, no scent, only endless dark stretching in all directions. And then, out of the void, a figure emerged. Her mother. Not the mother she remembered, warm and fierce, but something else. Her fur was spectral, flowing like mist. Her eyes, empty, endless. Sivah's breath hitched. "Mother?" The figure tilted its head. "You have come." The voice was hers, yet not. It held echoes, distortions, something ancient woven beneath its tone. Sivah's muscles tensed. "What are you?" The figure smiled, a slow, eerie thing. "You already know." The whispers grew louder, swelling into a chorus of voices, overlapping, calling. Sivah staggered back. The air around her felt thick, pressing, suffocating. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "This isn't real." The past was reaching for her, and she was slipping into its grasp. But deep inside her, something fought back. A single thought. A single name. Riven. With a cry, Sivah ripped herself free. The void held in protest, but she did not stop. She ran, toward the light, toward her pack, toward home. The past could not have her. Not yet. Not ever.